It's
Live now, Chair.
Thank you. Good morning, members, officers and viewers. This Scrutiny Committee meeting is being conducted on a hybrid basis in accordance with the Local Government and Elections Wales Act 2021, which will operate alongside the Council's standing orders to ensure that we continue to take democratic decisions in an open and transparent manner. I would remind members that this meeting is being streamed live to the public. Can I request that you all switch off your cameras and mute your microphones when you are not speaking to ensure that there is no unnecessary background noise and to help with the audio and visual quality of the broadcast. The Council standing orders and code of conduct will apply at all times during the virtual meeting in the same way as at ordinary meetings. Members should conduct themselves accordingly. I also remind members to ensure the chat function is switched on and to use the facilities to indicate to me when they wish to speak on a particular item. Please do not speak until I've asked you. As well as being broadcast live, a recorded version of this meeting will be uploaded to the Council website for public viewing as soon as possible after the meeting. Whilst translations of the proceedings can be provided upon request, the images and sounds recording may also be used for training purposes within the Council. Thank you. Do we have any apologies?
Yes, Chair, we've got apologies from Councillor Bright and Councillor Jones.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest at this point? No, thank you. Moving on to the minutes of the previous meeting, page 3 of your agendas. Take them for accuracy first. Page 3, page 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. Okay,
Just on the page 8, Chair, several two things. The first is that the referrer was disappointed that no officer was present to answer questions. I think it's important that is minuted.
could you expand on that, please, Councillor Evans?
Yeah, we had 2 reports. One was from the head of Regen and one was from a scrutiny officer attached to the referral, but neither of them turned up to the meeting, so we couldn't ask them any questions, which I think was disappointing because there was nobody present to answer questions, having said that they weren't recommending it went ahead.
Okay, thank you.
And the second one, sadly, is you've got it the wrong way around about votes. But I'm happy for that to remain. But it looks as though it was passed or not.
Yeah, no, it's both of those, Councillor.
Thank you.
It's going to be as a writing for the minutes. There are some action points which I've discussed with the clerk previously and should be taken notes up.
Chair?
Yeah.
I think it's important we get through it in a public forum as well as in a free meeting. I think this goes back to last September when we asked the university to be contacted to see if they could come and explain why the numbers had gone down so dramatically over a number of years. Perhaps you can give us an update on the situation at the moment.
Absolutely. So that's with the Democratic Services Manager at the minute. She's spoken to the university. They've said that the data that we're interested in student numbers and in initiatives to increase those is readily available. They meet monthly to discuss it, so we'll be able to get a copy of that information and then decide how we want to proceed essentially based on that. So they are in discussion with the university.
So you, Chair, you know, we've been fobbed off for months. Yes, we had some information that their numbers have gone up by a few hundred the last 3 years. Reality is in 2010 or 15 there were about 20,000 students, something like that. We've now got about 2,500 students. So the whole point of asking them to attend a scrutiny meeting is to find out why their promised investment didn't happen in the city, why they've taken all the money from the investments we had in the city centre campus, which both the council and the previous urban regeneration company did. Why we haven't got any students living in here, or we have to rent out the one sold building in Newport to Bristol. So it's, you know, it's a big issue for the city, and unless they come forward and explain what they're going to do to try and address this problem, we have given them a lot. We've given them tens of millions of pounds, and they promised there weren't going to be any closures, and they closed the community campus. So I think it's only fair that somebody high enough in the organisation comes along to explain what they're going to do in the future to try and redress the problems they cause the city in the long term.
Thank you. All perfectly reasonable questions, but can we break this down into two parts? Are you content that our officers are doing all they can?
Well, no, I think you know, there needs to be an email sent from the committee, from each chair, to say we've discussed this, unless other people don't agree, of course. That, you know, we'd like somebody to attend in the senior position to explain and just, you know, what I talked about. So I don't know if other members have got a view on this. I'm hoping that they are, because it's incredibly important that we have a big student population in the city. Ask other members.
Do other members wish to comment on this? No. Okay. Thank you, Matthew.
Well, sorry, I think we need views of other members, so let's somebody comment. But it's not really a point in standing up, is it? I mean, it's
okay.
No, I'm, you know, I'm being serious.
I know you, Councillor.
Somebody must have a view.
I've accepted that your query.
Well, do you have a view, Chair?
I have a view.
Well, what's your view?
That we let the officers carry out their functions, and if it's going through Mr. Cornwall, I believe that was the officer who was tasked with
last September. You as chair, aren't you willing to take it forward to?
All the queries you've raised, I think, are perfectly reasonable. My view is that we should ask officers.
Well, it wasn't just me. I think there's several other members, and if you look back at the minutes from the corporate plan, there are several other members at the time who agreed it was a good idea. We got them along here. So,
Councillor Evans, you really can't force people to speak if they don't want to.
Well, I'm not forcing people to speak, but I'm just saying we are here to scrutinise, and if we can't make any progress over something as simple, it's not a political point, it's just a point about the future of Newport, and how important it is to have students in the city for a vibe. You know, it's in the corporate plan.
And I think I commented at one of the meetings that if we actually have a functioning university, it's worth £1 an hour to every job in the city.
Absolutely, you know, it's vital. I guess the frustration comes in, you know, we talk about it and we've talked about it and nothing happens. And so
I think, Councillor Evans, you have labelled this point now for a few
well,
weeks.
I've labelled it for years because I still believe in it, and still we haven't gotten.
I will ask Mr. Cornwall to hasten this if he possibly can. But we can't force them to come here anymore.
I appreciate we can't force
to speak.
No, I appreciate we can't force them, but if they are unwilling or unwilling to attend, that's fine. But at least we'll have that in writing that they're not willing to. I'll be surprised if they were unwilling to attend.
Time will tell. Okay. Any other points of action now in the minutes?
Yes, please, Chair. Can we move on to page 7? And you talked that.
Sorry, that's right. Anybody else got anything to propose? Page 7. No? Okay, thank you. Page 7, please.
It's in page 7
of the.
Right, it's in not page 7. The one page 7 of the actual document that we were sent, the whole document, or just page 7 of that particular.
Page 7 of the whole document.
Oh, right, okay. That's got to look at the report separate.
And we're looking right at the top, I think, aren't we, Councillor Evans?
I mean, it was a point, again, going back to over a year ago, when we made a recommendation, which we said that IT make training courses open. This was the recommendation we made the previous year, and I sent you and the committee an example of something which wasn't working in the system, where we have to go and log on to something on the Welsh NHS website, put in a different password, and then there was no direct link, and then I ended up being told I couldn't enrol on this particular course, so I gave up. And that was something which we raised the previous year. So I guess, again, the frustration is, well, if we make recommendations and they're not listened to, because training courses are important, and it's not just in this particular committee, it's in social services. And there is a way, and I know Reece mentioned that there's this system now where you can tell if people have done the course. And I think it's a simple thing. Somebody has to do a course, they're told you have to do this course. They go onto this button, they press the link, and they do the course, and then it's registered they've done it. Not have to go out to some external provider, search for this particular course, log in with different passwords, and end up getting a different screen.
And again, I think we've given the answer that as we're not the provider, we have to adhere to the external providers.
Well, yeah, again, this was raised over a year ago. Who's accountable? So we make a recommendation. Who's accountable to ensure that these recommendations are implemented or not, as the case may be? Because somebody's got to be accountable. Somebody's accountable.
Well, the problem with recommendations, I would say, is that they are recommendations.
Yeah.
They're not enforceable, so you're making them in good faith, really and truly. As to who's accountable, maybe that's something we could look at with outcomes monitoring to see whether recommendations are actually followed through or if they're not.
But I think with any organisation, if you do put an action forward, and if it's not carried out, then somebody needs to be accountable. If they're going to turn around and say no, we're not interested, that's fine. Then I don't want to waste my time turning up to meetings to draft reports where we make a recommendation, because actually it will come back to us. So if they decide to monitor our scrutiny committee work, and I say, well, sorry, well, we made these recommendations, they go to cyberspace and nothing happens, then I don't want to be the one who's accused of not taking scrutiny seriously.
Well, I think for clarity, we need to send this to the chief exec. At the end of the day, she is overall responsible for what happens to the recommendations.
You just see my point. I just yes, not you doing this. First happened in 1999, and we actually used to get things done. And I just read report after report, and we do things, and then nothing ever happens. And it's just like, well, it should do, because if it doesn't, fine. Then somebody's got to be accountable, and somebody's got to come here and explain why they're not going to do it. And that's, well, as a cabinet member, you could ask the leader of the council. That might focus the mind of it. Because these recommendations go to cabinet, don't they? But maybe we should ask the leader of the council to come and explain that. That might focus the mind on
some of the recommendations go to cabinet when they.
Well, these recommendations went to cabinet.
Okay. So we're trying the chief exec in the first instance.
In the first instance, I can ask for a response from the chief executive. What I would suggest is, what it sounds like you're asking for, Councillor Evans, is a more robust outcomes monitoring system. I can understand that. I'll take that away. I'll speak to Leanne, the Democratic Services Manager, and see what we can do to put something like that in place going forward.
And we'll get a written response
From the chief exec, yeah.
Thank you very much. Page 7. Done that one? Yeah. Okay, and page 8. You already touched on. Thank you. Right, if we can move on to the annual Welsh Language Monitoring Report 22-23.
Shall I introduce the colleagues? So, morning everyone, morning councillors. I'm Tracy McKean, head of People Policy and Transformation. We are presenting this morning the annual Welsh Language Report, and I can assure colleagues around the table and on the screen we do take the comments really seriously, and they're taken forward into the final report, and we've looked at previous comments before today. It's an annual report, it's statutory, and it goes to the Welsh Language Commissioner, but it also will go on to go to Cabinet and Council. So it's sort of our report, but it's also a public report for the Commissioner. So really important we satisfy their requirements too, and they may well be watching this. The statutory deadline is the 30th of June. It has to go onto our website by then, obviously go on in its draft form, and we'll make any changes following this if we need to. I don't want to get into my colleague's space, so I'll just introduce Janice Dent, Policy and Partnerships Manager, who I know you know, but what you won't know is that she is a Welsh learner and she did exams this week. I know you don't think it went very well, but you are a Welsh learner, so well done you. And also my colleague, Joseph Chambers, who, interestingly, you have been told I'm probably a Welsh expert, but you learned Welsh later in life, and that wasn't your background, so you know, really great to see a range of people interested in it. Yeah.
So this is our Welsh Language Annual Monitoring Report. So obviously adroddiad monitor brynhadol y iaith Cymraeg. Dwi'n mynd I siarad yn Saesneg, ond os oes unrhyw cwestiynau yn Cymraeg, na geisio ateb nhw. So I'm going to speak in English, but if there's any Welsh questions in Welsh, please let me know. I'll try and answer them. So the report is on pages 15 to 36 of your pack, with appendices on page 37 to 43. This is an annual monitoring report, as Tracy said. It's produced and published as part of our requirements under the Welsh Language Wales Measure Act and the associated standards. As Tracy said, it's for internal use, but also part of the legislation says that we provide this to the Commissioner and that it's published each year. So what members will find if they were here on the committee last year is we've tried to take on board recommendations from last year. So the report looks slightly different to how we did last year, but also we've needed to keep to the key parts of the report as required by the Welsh language standards. So the committee obviously has to consider the report and make any comments or recommendations prior to presentation at Cabinet and then Council, both mid-July. So a bit of a tight turnaround on this one, timings wise, but we're more than happy to, well, that's why we're here, obviously, to enable members to scrutinise and provide those comments. So Joe is our new Welsh Language Policy Officer. He took up his post in September 2022 and has been working really closely with internal officers, our partners, community members to promote and enhance the Welsh language offer across the whole city. So really pleased to have Joe on board. Committee members will notice there's some key information, key developments and challenges in the report, along with a record of complaints, both from residents and the Welsh Language Commissioner. As always, we don't see complaints always as negative. It's really good to get that feedback and actually can show how important the Welsh language is to the residents of Newport as well. So it's really encouraging sometimes to get that feedback, and we obviously learn from each one. So the monitoring tables from pages 29 to 33 provide a breakdown of those skills within each service area. As this annual report is the first one under the new service area framework, there are no comparisons to many of them, so this will be used then as the benchmark for the work moving forward. So dwi'n mynd I gwestiwn I draws I Joe I siarad tipyn mwy am yr adroddiad cyn agor am cwestiynau. So I'll hand over to Joe and talk you through the report in a bit more detail before we open up for questions.
Good morning, everyone. So, yn gyntaf, mae wedi bod yn bleser yn fawr I cynrychiol i'r Cyngor ar bethau ynglyn â'r iaith Gymraeg. Mwy na hynny, mae ysgrifennu ddoddiad eleni wedi dangos faint mae'r Cyngor wedi rwymo i'r iaith Gymraeg, nid jyst dros y flwyddyn diwethaf, ond yn hanesyddol hefyd. Mae'n gysylltu datblygu ac I gynhyrchu wedi bod gan popeth dros y flwyddyn, hoffwn I fynd â chi trwy'r eich pwyntiau ar y adroddiad. So Saesneg, in English. Good morning, everyone. I'm just going to thank you to John for handing it over to me. Just wanted to say that it's been an absolute pleasure to represent the council on all things Welsh language related since I started. More than that, it's been writing the report this year has shown how much the council is committed to the Welsh language, not just over the last year, but historically as well. You see that engagement, development and co-production has been a part of everything that we've done over the last year. And what I'd like to do is take you through a couple of the highlights of the report. Next. Okay, so in terms of key developments, like I said, so engagement, development and co-production were at the heart of everything. The report contains sections on the Welsh Language Promotion Officer, which is a temporary role. And that's work that's been integrated into the West, so the Welsh Education Strategic Plan this year. The continuation of work around community grants that were offered in the previous financial year, that work continued to be evaluated and implemented across over the last year. Things down to the Welsh language policy skills which were implemented this year, and also looking at the 5-year promotional strategy, which has 3 themes to it. Initially, we focused on how we're meeting those themes one by one. We have been promoting bilingual education across lots of events with lots of communities across the city through outreach and engaging with young learners, parents and young learners. We've run competitions with schools right across Newport on St David's Day, and we've also co-produced videos around Welsh Language Rights Day and Shwmae Smai Day. We had developed also internal kind of mechanisms to promote the language further. We did kind of a big push around St David's Day with a newsletter, and we also did some kind of community work to promote the work of the council, opportunities that were available at the time at Gwener, which is Newport's Welsh Language and Cultural celebration in the city, which happens annually, which we can sponsor. And we had to be present by owning the event and having time there to engage with attendees. We represent the council on local forums such as Forum Iaith and the Dave, which not just enable Newport City Council to influence what's happening on a county-wide level, on a city-wide level, but also on a county-wide level, and also on a national level. And more recently, we've been developing videos for Cymru's Wales to look at encouraging people to consider linguistic skills as an opportunity to develop their careers further on down the line. Looking forward, so they're the things that we have done over the last year. We're looking forward, we're going to continue with that theme of engagement, co-production, and looking at developing our creative partnerships with the side of the kind of mainstream college, school and university settings by developing our partnership with Newport's AFC and also the Dragons, by ensuring that Welsh is a feature of match games, and that we are reaching out to attendees of those games, and we are encouraging people to consider the Welsh language, use the Welsh language whilst they're there. And we're going to be having a greater focus over the next year on recruitment, retention and development of Welsh language speakers within the council. And again, facilitating more events over the next year, such as Casnewydd, but looking at more cross-cutting themes, so looking at age-specific and Welsh language themes, looking at community and Welsh language themes, and so on. So there's going to be a greater focus on it and on the cross-cutting Welsh language with equality, diversity and inclusion. And finally, I'd like to say that we are looking at developing a brand new scheme within the council with the national provider for Welsh for adults, which is called Cymraeg Gwaith. And this will afford the council a tailored approach to teaching Welsh within the council and gives access to a greater amount of resources over the coming years.
Thank you. Before I open up questions, just really this was something that the committee looked at when we discussed our future work programme. It's very close to the date that we have to submit. Next year, have we got the dates already when we need to submit?
Shall I add to that? It is always the 30th of June, but it can be published in draft at that point. The issue is getting it earlier. It's the report for the previous year, so it's actually the first of all the annual reports that come here. It'd be great to get it in May, but that would be tight in terms of putting it together. But it is the statutory deadline is the 30th of June.
So committee, are we content with that answer? Really raised by the committee. Okay, thank you very much. So we're up to questions now. Councillor on the way, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah. I'm absolutely amazed, actually. It's 12 months probably since we discussed the last report. It might have been, I think, there's a mention about 24th of June. How quickly this year has gone. And when we discussed it last year, I think, we had a promoter who was about to leave the job as well. And there were a number of points that we made there. What I found really, looking at the report, I was disappointed with it really. It may be structure or style, but as it is going to the Welsh Language Commissioner and so on, it really needs to be clear about our achievement in the last 12 months, I feel. Because 12 months ago, I think we were talking about COVID and all the other things that might have stopped really some progress being made. So, we've had 12 months now, and I look at the report and I would have liked to have seen, a coverage of what we have really achieved in the last 12 months. And I found that difficult to see really. There are bits and bobs, but not really sort of a consolidated list of what the council has achieved towards promoting the standards and towards, sort of achieving the very ambitious target of the Welsh Government, which is 1 million Welsh speakers by the year 2050, which means, Newport would have quite a lot of people by then, using Welsh sort of far more systematically than they do now. So, I would have liked to have seen that. I think the other thing which I believe either myself or someone else did last year when we were discussing this similar topic was about how do we compare with other local authorities in our sort of promotion of the Welsh language. How do we compare with the former sort of family of Gwen Council, and how do we compare maybe more importantly with something like Cardiff, which is a city like ourselves? There is nothing there to tell us really how well we are doing, or how do we measure up to them. And I think the third point I found is that if we go to page 35, where we're looking forward, trying to get there. Yeah. Okay, so it talks about, we have also identified several new priorities, including Cymraeg, Gwaith, a new grant scheme that will enable the council to access an innovative, tailored approach to Welsh language teaching within the organisation that will afford the council all of the Odilion curriculum, bespoke informal learning section, and all that, which sounds very impressive, but there's nothing there to say how we can actually going to make use of those grants, or what we're going to do with them. Where is the plan for that for next year? That seemed to be absent. And since it's a report, that's going there, I think it should have some information how the council is going to actually access such money in its work for the promotion of the Welsh language. So I think that's missing as well. Yeah, I just leave it there, Chair, for the time being.
Okay, thank you. going to take this, Ms. Bent?
So if I start
Yeah.
and then hand over. I guess we note the councillor's comments about the disappointment of the style of the report. We had responded to previous feedback, which was about having kind of case studies and bringing it to life a bit. So we've done some work to change the report on that basis. In terms of kind of the performance monitoring element, that also comes through our service plan and the Wales Government question. This report is our report on how we're doing against our plan. So we bring the plan to scrutiny, we've agreed a plan, and this is how we're achieving against our own plan, which contributes to Wales Government, obviously, but this is us reporting against our own plan. And in terms of the other reports from other places, we don't have those yet, but we can look at that when all of those are published. But in terms of our progress, we need to look at our own staff versus our own staff, because we need to look at the population data for Welsh language in Newport and how we're progressing in Newport, which is quite different to elsewhere in Wales. I think the point about comparing with Gwent is a much, probably a more productive way to go, because it's a more similar environment. Janice, did you want to come in?
Yeah, I think we have tried to make it a bit more lively, as we said, rather than just data, which was feedback from last year. So we can see where we can maybe look at creating a balance out of that. But we have tried to break down how we've met the standards, how we've met the plan, each of the objectives of the plan as a paragraph of how we've achieved that over the year. I appreciate what you said, Councillor, about we had COVID the year before. No excuses, but we did also have 6 months without a Welsh language policy officer in this year as well. So I think we are still really proud of the progress that we have all made as contained within the report. In relation to other areas, so Joe is part of a Gwent and national Welsh language policy officer group, so that's definitely something that we can look at having conversations about. But everybody else is going through the same process as us at the moment, as in presenting their reports to scrutiny, so that isn't available as yet to be able to measure against. But we are working, and I think the Welsh language, what are we going to do with those Welsh language for the moving forwards with Cymraeg oedolion? Those conversations are at really early stages at the moment. We haven't agreed anything. So until we get that kind of final signature on the dotted line, unfortunately, we're not in the position to be able to say exactly what we're going to do with it. But the overall aim is to be able to improve and increase our Welsh language training offer to our members, to our staff, so that we can upskill people within the council and enable them and more people to be able to give a Welsh language service to our residents. But very early stages at the moment, so it's very dependent on how those discussions progress.
Can I just respond, Chair?
Please.
In view of I think it's a big task really to promote the use of Welsh language for Newport. I'm talking about Newport, our own community, looking at, previous tradition and history of all this, it's going to be quite a hard work. And I think, having a Welsh promoter sort of part-time is not going to do it. I think if the council is really serious about meeting these standards and about promoting the use of Welsh language in Newport, they really need to have a dedicated officer to work and to make use of all the available funding and all the available avenues to really increase awareness of and making use of the opportunities to promote the language in Newport. So I think that's something that the cabinet members should really consider, and not sort of consider a part-time sort of post here and a part-time there. It's like I was saying, really, this report got bits and bobs about what we are doing, but if you read it, it is not really, it doesn't read to me as a serious attempt for actually trying to discharge, if you like, those are duties that the Welsh Government are expecting of the council and the Welsh Language Commissioner. I'm really very disappointed with it. And it's almost no different from what we were 12 months ago here. You know, there are bits and bobs, as I've said, but that's about all really. It's a difference. So if we are serious, we need to do something a little bit more serious and consolidated than what we are doing now. Thank you.
Ms McKim has indicated she'd like to respond to that.
Thank you. I feel we must just note the comments about your disappointment. I wasn't really sure about the part-time element. So to be clear, council is really committed to the standards, and even outside of that, the promotion of the Welsh language. I've obviously read the reports of the last 7 years, and I would say this is the best one we've had. It is in a different style. If members, and perhaps the members, don't like the style, then we need to note that, of course. We need to note the Commissioner's feedback also. It isn't a part-time role. Joseph's role is full-time. We had someone leave and replace that person. We had some additional resource temporarily through some other funding. And we do, it is difficult to work with short-term funding, but it is also really important that we seek all opportunities for funding. So there's a permanent post. We also have the Senior Equalities Officer, Donald, who's online. Joe is full-time working on Wales. Jan obviously supports that also. But when we can seek external funding, we always will. And when we could spend that external funding with our communities, we always will. And that is short-term often, but nevertheless really useful.
On this one point, if I can ask Mr. Chambers, are you comfortable that you can work within these broad brush lines to achieve something meaningful over the next year?
Absolutely, I think we developed lots of new partnerships through independence partnerships further last year, especially, and there are lots of opportunities, not just externally within the community, but internally as well, to become a great focus. So there's lots of scope for us.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else, please? Councillor, yeah.
There was one issue obviously this really is a key part of the council's work, a key part of the council's strategy is development towards language, and there's obviously enormous amount going on as well. There's a lot of very good work going on. That's in the report. That you talked about putting case studies in there, and obviously they do. I accept that they do bring quite a lot of things to do to life as well. But one thing that I would like, I felt would feel happier if as a member of this committee scrutinising what's happening. One thing I feel a little more comfortable is if maybe there was a little more. I accept that it's very descriptive, the report, and I suppose what I'm getting at really is that I think it also could be balanced by some sort of evaluation data as well. That I know that you don't want to report just static facts and figures and tables. I accept that, and you're well achieved in not doing that. And there are some stats in there around, for example, breakdown of the council staff, etc., etc. But and to be fair, there has been in the report as well. One thing that I felt was very pleasing in the report is there's been a real effort to strike out at sort of minority communities in what is a very diverse city. So that was pleasing to see as well. But I suppose what I'm after really is maybe a little bit of some facts and figures that show how well these things are working. If I can just, one issue, if I give it as an example, that the education strategic plan obviously is a really important part of what the council's trying to do in terms of developing Welsh language. And a lot of resources are going into that, obviously, in Welsh language medium education. But I mean, I had a long career in education, and one of my, I can't come up with the facts, the hard stats to prove this, but anecdotally, I think without a doubt, my impression was that families who make a choice about where their children go, because they prefer a particular style of education, like Welsh medium or a church school, etc., and not just automatically send a kid to the local community comp, tend to be more people who are more educated, are often more middle class, etc. And so I mean, for example, I'd be very interested to see a sort of breakdown of students in Welsh medium education to make sure that we are really, because we should as a council, this is an offer that we want everybody in the city to take advantage of. So that'd be one example, for example, where I'd perhaps like to see a breakdown of some statistics to see if there are groups, maybe we're not, who are not engaging with Welsh medium education. If not, well, I'll look at this. The council can look to develop strategies to address that.
Okay.
I mean, we can speak to education about that. I think the Westfield presented separately, and the kind of education department feeds that report onto that, but certainly significantly as provision. I think the comment. The reason I was smiling is the comment about educated people and middle class people choosing being the main people that chose Welsh language education is something that comes through, and I've just had discussions a lot about, because it used to be the same when I was in school, so people used to say that, but actually my mum was a single mum, I was on free school meals, I had clothing, vouchers, etc., etc. So I think that is a perception rather than reality.
Well,
so and there were many other children, in school in the same position as me. So I think, we can definitely ask for that raw data, which will be helpful. But I think we do need to start looking at that perception as well and challenging it internally and externally, because the more we kind of promote that as being the case, then the less likely people are.
I mean, what I'm asking for is, with respect, you can always find exceptions anywhere to, and you can always find exceptions anywhere. Now, maybe that perception is wrong. I mean, I just feel a little more comfortable if, maybe if that could be demonstrated to me, and I think that's important. Yeah, I mean, maybe for the reason you say, if that perception is wrong and that is not what is happening, that needs to be made clear.
Yeah, we can definitely speak to education colleagues as for that information.
Okay, thank you. I don't think you actually mentioned middle class in your initial question. I don't think you actually mentioned middle class in your initial question. You did.
I think I did actually. Yes, I said people that
you did. Okay.
I'm sorry, I won't drag this out, but having said that, I think that has actually been, maybe not on Welsh medium education, but certainly on, for example, parents who choose to send their children to a school with a religious ethos. There absolutely has been research on that, which has shown that it does tend to not necessarily be taken up evenly across the whole social spectrum. Maybe Welsh medium education is different, but I'd like to improve.
Yeah, it would be good to have the data.
Yeah.
We can put on board for next year then. Thank you. Councillor Evans.
Sure. I mean, good news. Only 5 complaints in the year. One of them was about trying to contact the call centre in Welsh. Well, I'll probably get more complaints about that in a week, about people can't contact the call centre in English, let alone in Welsh. So, that's good news. Unlike me, Dad, I do like the format. I'm not on volumes of stats, and in some ways, we've got a list of courses which people attended, and you're talking about. I'm not convinced we actually need that information. Because all it's telling me is that nobody attended, book 1 or 2, or Lovey, or 1 person did. They're all tiny little numbers. What I'm more interested in is there was one, I think, where State only Welsh. 30 people did it 2 years ago. They went to none. And on the other side, Welsh language awareness is on page 29 or 30. We went from 9 to 99. So I'm more interested in the figures, not looking at figures here. Obviously, one person, but very trends, or why is nobody using this Say Something Welsh app now? Is it something we've discontinued? Is it something which was not as readily available? So more about the trends now potentially. And I know, this thing about comparison data drives feelings to me when not your fault, the Welsh government changed some comparisons. And it's frustrating because, I'd like to look at the 5-year, what we should be comparing with how we were doing 5 years ago today. And if there's any information, I agree with Mick that overlooking at a Gwen, which is probably a fair enough area to look at as Welsh speakers go. So, yeah, I mean, it's clear and concise. Just, certain information which doesn't mean anything, but where we have got that, perhaps just some rationale behind why that's gone up or why that's gone down.
Can I just say one thing that might be useful for us to do as well? So there are other, we capture in here the requirements of this report. It sounds a lot of committee, doesn't it? And in other reports, there's other stuff that might be useful here. So we don't want to duplicate. But there are some things in our service plan, for example, on staff percentages who can speak Welsh versus the population of Newport. And that's helpful. And actually, we're exceeding the population averages there, which means we're doing well with our own staff, which if we can't do well with our own staff, we can't really promote that within communities. I don't think that's here, but it is in other reports. And the point about the West is similar. There are other reports, but actually perhaps we could put in some other useful data that tells more of a story. Yes.
But the education plan, it is actually referred to in this report, isn't it? It's given as an example. Yeah.
On that one, if I could suggest that the committee discuss this when the officers are meeting, try and figure out exactly what we want to see in next year's report. Now, bearing in mind our previous discussions on not wanting weighty reports with lots of appendices, and we need to think about, do we want a report that specifically answers requirements of the Welsh education of the Welsh Language Act, or do we want to expand that into Welsh education, etc., etc.? So, we can look at
our regulatory recommendations of what we feel as a committee would be useful and carry forward for next time.
Thank you, Chair. And just to say, so you talked about next year, we pending if the data is available and we've captured it, we will be able to make changes to this year's report. So it's accepted, it's in draft at the 30th of June, and when it goes to cabinet, if there's anything we can change from this discussion, we will. So it isn't necessarily so that there's a year's lapse, but it depends on what it is. So,
okay,
thank you.
Any other councillors?
Chair, did you?
Please.
I raised my hand on another question.
Please, councillor. Yeah.
Sorry, you haven't seen that?
No.
Can't see you, Mick.
Okay. Is it okay to go ahead?
Yes, please.
Okay. Yeah. Specific question on section 8, which is looking forward to 2023, 2024. So the first two priorities, they appear to be, it says, engage with all of the Newport diverse communities to promote the Welsh language, raise awareness, visibility of the language, and continue to develop Welsh medium education and the inclusivity of the language. And then working with our refugee, migrant, and minority ethnic communities to better embed Welsh language as part of shared sense of identity across the city. I'm not complaining, Chair. That's good. That's very good. But I'm intrigued really as to, you know, why we are singling out those particular communities for, in terms of the Welsh promotion, the Welsh language promotion. What's the rationale for those two priorities exactly?
Would like to take
Because they
this.
seem to be singled out.
If I start, I think the first point is, perhaps we reword it, is talking about engaging with all of Newport's communities. So the first point is not intended to be about specific communities, so we can reword that perhaps, but we're talking about engaging with all communities, all ages, all, you know, all different origins. The second point is reaching out to specific groups. I guess we feel that's important. It's hopefully significant. It's work we've already started that we want to continue. Jan, do you want to come in on that point specifically?
Yeah, and I think that point was for people that are new to Newport or new to the country, and how we can make people welcomed and kind of introduced to the Welsh culture and Welsh language from the beginning. So it is, they are both, I can see where the confusion is lied, but they are meant to be completely different. So people that live in Newport, and then people are new to coming into Newport, new to Wales, new to UK even, new to the language completely. So we can reword that. Thanks, Councillor.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a, like I said, really, I'm not really complaining, but there seem to be quite a bit of weight being, you know, shifted towards, if you like, the minority communities and sort of migrants and asylum seekers who might have different priorities actually arriving in the country in terms of learning what they would perceive as the most important to them, which is English, really, you know. So yeah, I think I know what you mean, but I think it needs to be expressed so that it doesn't appear as though, you know, these would be our target audience to the exclusion, if you like, of the sort of you know, more wider communities, really.
Yeah, can I just say our Equalities Officer is monitoring this committee this morning, and I'm sure he will have views on the points that you've, on the very relevant points that you've made.
Donald, do you want to come in? Is that possible? Donald?
Yes. Good morning, everyone. I think it's important when we look at our work with minority communities and underrepresented communities is that academic research has highlighted that people from minority backgrounds experience greater barriers in terms of accessing the Welsh language and developing Welsh language skills. So as a council, we are trying to be proactive and take steps into enabling all members of our communities to develop their Welsh language skills. So acknowledging the disadvantages that people from underrepresented communities may have in developing Welsh language skills or accessing the Welsh language. So one of our priorities is making the Welsh language more accessible to everyone within our communities. That's what the target develops from.
Okay, thank you. Sorry, and the point of the council.
Sorry.
Priority.
Chair, I'm just saying that needs to be said then, perhaps more, how can I say, more clearly, really, because that's not, that hasn't come out of the way it is stated currently in the report.
Okay, you've agreed to amend the report.
Thank you. We'll take a look at that. I think the intent that the report covers is obviously in the original strategy, so we'll go back to the strategy, but the strategy will cover that. Yes, we'll make sure that's clear.
Okay, thank you. Are you content now, Councillor Amy?
One last point, I think.
Yeah,
a champion for the Welsh language has been mentioned in there. I think currently is Councillor John Harris, but I think perhaps, you know, a champion should have, perhaps he should comment somewhere, commenting on the report as well. I mean, how does the champion then see the report. Perhaps that's useful to have as well.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, both the Cabinet Member and the Welsh Language Champion and our group of Welsh language staff all see the report and make any relevant comments before it comes to scrutiny.
I think in a pre-discussion you asked that they actually had space for a comment themselves.
Yeah, I mean, not just a question of seeing the report, but what is the function of the champion? You know, would be useful to have a note from them, a commentary from them on the report. I think that's useful. How do they see the achievement in the last year?
Thank you, Councillor. So there will be a forward in the final report, as there always are, usually post Cabinet. So the final published copy will have a forward. I can't remember if it's from Cabinet Member or jointly Cabinet Member and Champion. I mean, the role of the champions is part of the democratic setup, I guess. So perhaps not for me to answer, but it is quite literally to champion the Welsh language, to attend events, to support us when needed, to promote Welsh within communities and so on. I mean, that's sketchy outline.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody else have a question? No, right. Thank you very much then.
Councillor Baker-Westhead.
Oh, right. Councillor Baker-Westhead, please.
Yep, I was just wondering, you know, in terms of, I know it was mentioned that maybe moving forward, this year's report for 2022-23 will be used as sort of benchmarking tool, looking into the future, you know, and how we can mark against where we are for the 2022-23 year. I'm just wondering if there is any mechanism. It's beyond maybe the remit of this report itself, but how we compare to other government bodies then, you know, within Wales. Is there any tool that's pushed down from Welsh Assembly to assist with that, to see how we're comparing to other government bodies, not just other authorities, but, you know, maybe the police authority, fire service or anything like that, to see if there's any tools that they're using or any methods that they're employing that could be equally used within Newport Council.
Please.
Thank you, Councillor. I guess two bits to that. In terms of comparisons, the benchmarking data was lapsed, I guess, during COVID. So there'll be more possibilities for benchmarking in the future. But I think the more interesting point there is about, is there practice elsewhere that we can pick up usefully, or organisations we can work with? I think that's a really useful point. We currently work with a number of partners. Could we expand that to share some good practice? I'm sure we could, and that's possibly something Joe could take on in the committee. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay. I have one small question, more point of clarification really. The Welsh Language Implementation Group is mentioned in here. What exactly is it, please?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Welsh Language Implementation Group, WLIG, is a group of representatives from across the council that meet to help monitor the Welsh language standards within the council, discuss any implementation plan that involves the Welsh language, identify any challenges that the council faces in terms of Welsh language implementation, but also identify successes that have happened and develop those successes further. The group has representatives from social care, from senior management, from HR, and obviously from the qualities team. And we meet every 3 months to look at any kind of issues that are coming through, develop plans that we're working on, and to, I guess, identify where things have gone well and have developed those kind of successes further.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much for your attendance this morning. Need to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
No job answer the last one.
Not more designs than that.
Oh, is he? You might not be.
Yes.
You not think he's here?
No, I thought that Jason was doing it because new elections.
Yeah. Well, somebody used to have a non-Welsh speaker in charge of Welsh language, and I can remember it was years ago. Can't think of their name.
Right. Okay. Recommendations to the committee or anything else you wish? We content with the annual report. So true and fair reflection of the work. Okay.
If it's okay, Chair, just to get clarification on what we want to recommend. Obviously, we've got two different points about having more data or being content with the style of the report as it is. How does the committee feel overall? Do they think it would be better to have more of a balanced report with more figures and statistics in it, as well as having the case studies and the story building elements, or are they happy with it as it is? I think we should be clear on what we want before we make a recommendation.
I think I should see it's more the quality of the data.
Okay.
We don't need to know that one person attended the so-and-so course. There's a small number. We do need a headline of what courses have seen significant drops or rises, and the officers will know what there are. And again, if you're linking into the number of council speakers from the education speech plan, things like that, then I think that will be helpful. I don't want to see pages and pages of extra stats, because those stats there are mostly meaningless with a few exceptions. It's just a headline. If you can get from other areas about, then I think that'd be useful, but
so more meaningful data.
more meaningful.
Okay.
I mean, my view.
Sorry, we got Councillor Davis would like to speak.
Okay.
So I'll wait. We'd like to come back, I think.
Hi, yeah. What I'd like to say about the report is I agree with Matthew about the stats and everything, but what I enjoyed about it was the fact that there was feedback from people that had attended the events. So I'd like to see a bit more of that as a balance to all the stats and figures, but also with regards to events that was held throughout the year for Welsh speakers and to encourage Welsh speakers. I enjoyed the feedback from people that attended that. So that's something I'd like to see more of.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Rheoli?
Yeah, I like to see the comparative data with the other authorities, Chair. It should be possible to obtain those. I'd like to know how well we are doing, especially say a place like Cardiff. I know they have more resources perhaps, but it would be informative to us. You know, I've got no idea really how well or badly we are doing. And the other thing, you know, like I was saying, I think, you know, any achievements we have made in the year, I think those should be clearly stated. And as the reports stand, that is not the case.
Councillor Cox?
I mean, I believe strongly that any useful report finds a balance, doesn't it? That I agree with Matthew here that we don't want sort of pages and pages of sort of tables and data, but I do find it very difficult as a member of the committee to make a judgment about something. And sorry, I can just wind back a little bit. Qualitative data is very, very important, and that this report does that well. But there is a balance, isn't it? Qualitative data on its own, I think, doesn't, it's necessarily focused. It lacks the sort of whole picture, and so we really do need a balance, I think. And what I think would the sort of style, what I would certainly favour is not a report stacked with lots and lots of tables, but maybe a report which says, for example, this course was had an excellent response, and then maybe there's a footnote then where you can go maybe into an appendix. The data can be in an appendix or elsewhere in the report, and people who want to actually then follow up with a comment or a judgment with the data can actually go in the appendix. And it doesn't then affect the flow of the report. The report is still a good read, it's still easy to read, it's easy to follow the main arguments of it, and but there is evidence to back it up, and you know where to go.
Okay, Councillor Baker-Westhead.
Yeah, I'm really sort of agreeing with most of what's been said there. I think it is important to strike the balance between qualitative and quantitative data in a report like this. It's no good having just reams and reams of stats that don't really paint the full picture. I think obviously it'd be more useful going forward to have a similar sort of level of stats in this, so we can compare to the year that they've started with as 22-23. But as Mick was saying, I think it really is important as well to have some comparatives to surrounding local authorities, and particularly the ones that are relevant to the Newport area, so that the borders, maybe Torfaen, Caerphilly, Monmouthshire, because that'll give us a really good idea as being an eastern sort of sitting council as to where we compare with achieving these standards going forward. And I think we need some sort of comparative to other bodies, really, rather than just standalone, to give us a good idea of how well we're achieving against the targets that we need to. Otherwise, there's no real benchmark for comparison, so it's quite difficult to see how well we're progressing. Rather than just getting a sort of a snapshot of where we've been for that particular year, we need to know what the progress is going to be towards that target in 2050.
Yeah, couldn't agree more.
If I can summarise then, Chair, if that's all right. What we want more of is a balance. We want more meaningful data, more comparative data, but we want to continue with the information that does show the story, the case studies, the feedback. So just more of a balanced report rather than all one way or the other way. Would you say that's fair?
Yes, but I think the committee needs to think about our family of local authorities, which is a phrase we always used to use, which has somewhat fallen apart since the pandemic. Because although we're looking at our neighbouring authorities, which seems quite a good idea, but we need to go back maybe to the 21 census and see the proportion of our speakers, and we might find we're very dissimilar to some of the other authorities around us. And it could be that some of the authorities further west may give us a good comparison, but this is something that really is high-level strategic stuff that should be taken on by the council to decide what our family of councils are, and that can be socio-economic and all the other good things that go into that banner.
But so I think the Gwener comparison is probably a better comparison, because there's no good comparison with Ceredigion or something like that, because you're going to have, I don't know, different. And there's no point comparing with Cardiff. Cardiff always gets billions of pounds more money than we do in Newport anyway. I think the local authorities in the area Claire mentioned would be beneficial, because we're talking about, there's Monmouthshire or Torfaen or Isfahan or Caerphilly, and you're going to have wealthy areas, you're going to have poor areas, and just how much emphasis they put on it within South East Wales, because it's not going to be perfect, but it's about the Welsh language. It's not about any other comparison with both. It's just purely about you know, how successful they were there, and then you've got, you know, a balance of local authorities in the area. All controlled by the same political party, no doubt. So.
Yeah, but over, Councillor, we had Councillor Evans will remember, you know, when we were looking at reports 5 years ago, how voluminous they were, and we've largely got away from that now. I think we're going down the right route by we're getting compressed reports, but still containing enough information for us to make reasonable decisions.
I mean, that's a good chair. One reason I suggested maybe separate some of the data out, because if you look at a lot of government civil service reports, that they have a set style whereby always it is the main point of an executive summary at the beginning, then there's the bulk of the report, which is descriptive. And it's relatively short and readable, but then if you do, you know, if you're somebody who does like to see the data to back something up, you can have a footnote in there which takes you down into an appendix or appendices where the data is elsewhere, which doesn't, you know, affect the flow of the report. I think you can have actually a report that's readable without, you know, which isn't stuck with tables, but still include the metadata available.
Yeah, it's all about balance, isn't it? Everything balance.
Sorry, shall I do again?
That's fine. So just to be 100% clear that we're all on the same page, well, I'm on the same page as everyone, I suppose. Yes. So a more balanced report, more quantitative and meaningful data, more links to other plans, comparative data with comparable councils within Gwent, and a continuation of case studies and feedback as it paints a full picture then. Is there anything I've missed, or do you think that's...
Yeah, you say Gwent. I mean, I like to see Cardiff as well, really, simply because Cardiff sort of, you know, in urban terms, just to add Cardiff to the Gwent one, really, that's all I'm asking.
Well, let's see what the data stacks up as. Maybe get the officers to decide on that.
I've just added that then.
And one point, when we say links, we mean e-links. So we
yes.
Right. So, and that.
So hyperlinks within the report that will take you to another paper.
If you so wish to read further, and please make sure that the hyperlinks work.
Well, because the links on this report, they don't work though.
Do they not?
So the links in blue don't work. There are links in there, so but they don't work. So
okay, that's certainly something we can look at as well.
Yeah.
Outside of that, now we've narrowed that down. The other recommendations I have are Councillor Onwayne's comments asking for the rewording of the priorities to be clearer, and asking for comments from the Welsh language champion to be included. Is there anything else anyone wants to add?
Again, those points were clarified during the meeting. It's no harm to say it again. Okay, thank you very much. So we're on to the recommendations on page 9. True and fair accounting council's Welsh language performance over the 22-23 period. We content? Okay, thank you. Does it highlight the ongoing commitment to the Welsh language? We content? Yeah. And do we see appropriate areas of development being focused on? And the Welsh language officer was asked that specifically, and he felt he could work within that framework, and that we should see improvements by next year.
Yeah, they need to, you know, they need to be a bit of a clearer plan on how they're going to use some of the money that is available from this new grant scheme, which is on page 35.
Yeah, but they also
I think the report ought to really, you know, it seems to say We've also identified several new priorities, including that. And then it lists a number of things, but it doesn't say how, the council is going to make use of all that. I think they need to expand on that a bit.
Yeah, that's a fair point, but that'll be for next year, obviously.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I think we've covered out those points. So these are 3 points we believe have been covered, and we've given a commentary of what we want to do for upcoming reports. Yeah.
Yeah.
So if we're done with that, can we move on to the scrutiny officer's reports, which is on page 53.
45 it begins,
45.
but the table's obviously attached at the end there. The action table, there's no real update. It's only to show that we've included the action regarding the university. I'll make sure the action regarding outcomes monitoring is added as well. I'll speak to Leanne and Neil, and we'll see what we can do there. Still chasing for an answer, a definitive answer on car charging ports. Hopefully we'll get that number soon. In terms of the forward work programme, you may have seen me make an amendment to the placeholder appointment in your diaries yesterday. We've had to change the date from the 29th of September to the 9th of October. It is a meeting that's outside of our normal meeting schedule. It is a Monday. We've had to do this just to accommodate officers so they can actually attend and present the annual plan report, the self-assessment report. So that's what we'll be taking there. I'm speaking with officers about whether that report will come as an individual item or we'll have another item attached to it. So I'll be able to give an update as soon as I have that information. That's the only change to the programme.
There's no meeting on the 29th.
No, not on the 29th of September anymore. It's on the 9th of October.
9th of October.
There should be an appointment placeholder in your diaries. I amended it yesterday.
Okay.
I know that it was raised that could we potentially start the meeting later for a 2 PM start rather than a 1 PM. If it's a single item agenda, which it may be, then potentially, but I'll update you as soon as I know anything more there. And that's all from me, Chick, unless anyone has anything to add.
Thank you very much for that.
Well, I think, Chair, on that point, whether it's a 2-item agenda, it's up to the committee to decide whether they want to meet 1 or 2. And I'll ask the officers to accommodate us, rather than me having to.
Well, it's always preferable to have a 2-item agenda.
Oh, it's always preferable, and again, I've never known a meeting meet at 1 o'clock. So anyway, either it's the morning or the afternoon.
It is unusual. It is unusual. What I mean there is, so if we look at the September meetings as they're presented in the report now, we'd have a meeting on the 8th of September for the corporate wellbeing self-assessment and the digital annual strategy report. And then we would have had the 29th of September for the strategic equalities at plan. We've had to move the 29th to the 9th, put the corporate wellbeing self-assessment in on that date. Then it's just a question of whether officers, can write the strategic equalities plan report to accommodate, the meeting on the 8th, or whether it would have to come to the 9th. But like I said, I've sent an email off to the report writer today and yesterday. Recently, hopefully get a response and we'll be able to figure out which one will be the single item and which one will be the double. I appreciate, double item agendas is optimal. That's what we want. It's more worthwhile, but sometimes it just doesn't work out that way, unfortunately.
So much to look forward to, haven't we?
But that's all from me, I promise you.
Does anybody else have anything else to say? No?
Councillor Baker Weston.
Councillor Baker Weston?
No, I'm fine.
The raise hand function hasn't been working terribly well this morning, so please be sure that you do make your motions known if you can't get it to work. It's a small committee, I'm sure we can accommodate it one way or another. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we can
Yeah, we then July, please, Pam.